Chrisean Rock has finally snapped, and this time she took the entire internet down with her, the blood on the walls, the stolen G-Wagon that crossed half the country, the pound of Xanax the troopers say was hers, the newborn baby she was allegedly poisoning with liquor on camera, the man in the ground nobody wants to name out loud, the fistfight in the middle of the street in 2026, the trafficking charges that carry an 8-year prison ceiling, and the toxic Blueface obsession that refuses to die no matter how many times Blueface publicly buries it. Every single one of those flames is burning at the same time right now, and Chrisean Rock is standing dead center of the wildfire. Look, if you have followed the Chrisean Rock saga for even 5 minutes, you already know Chrisean Rock is not some ordinary celebrity meltdown. This is a slow-burning explosion that started years ago and somehow keeps finding new fuel every single week. Blueface has told on Chrisean Rock has told on herself, Blueface has taken it back, Chrisean Rock has denied it, Blueface has posted her, Blueface has deleted the post, and every single time the dust settles for half a second, Chrisean Rock kicks it right back up in the air. And the receipts? The footage don't lie. Camera caught, time-stamped, archived forever. Watch this. Circle it back to what I said a second ago about the walls. That is not a rumor somebody spun up on a Twitter thread. That actually happened, on camera, time-stamped, with Blueface himself confirming the horror movie playing out in his own living room. Blueface said Chrisean Rock broke into his home while he was dead asleep, tiptoed past his bed, cut herself open in the hallway, and wrote his name across his wall in her own blood before stealing his car and driving it more than 1,000 miles across the country to hand it to her mother. Read that sentence again slowly. That is not a music video. That is not a bit for the podcast. That is a full-blown horror sequence, and Blueface described it like he was recounting an ordinary Tuesday morning. Blueface looked straight into the camera and said, plain as day, when does that make it okay to steal somebody's car and drive it across the country to give it to their mom? For all the people telling Blueface he loved Chrisean Rock, for all the people saying they were adults and this was just messy love, Blueface drew the line right there in the sand. We are grown, Blueface said. We are not kids. This is not cool. Blueface said his car was gone the second he woke up. Blueface said the night before, they were not even hanging out. Blueface said Chrisean Rock tiptoed past him while he was asleep. Blueface said Chrisean Rock cut herself breaking in. Blueface said Chrisean Rock left him a little note in her own blood. And still, 4 years later, Chrisean Rock and Blueface are running the exact same playbook. Think about that for a second. This wall writing, blood smearing, car stealing chapter happened back in 2022. We are sitting here in 2026, almost knocking on the door of 2027, and Chrisean Rock is still tangled up with Blueface, still trending for the ugliest reasons, still burning down every ounce of goodwill the internet has ever given her. If that is not the textbook definition of a broken cycle, I do not know what is. Chrisean Rock and Blueface do not just have a toxic relationship. Chrisean Rock and Blueface have engineered the most publicly documented dysfunctional partnership of the entire modern internet era, and they have monetized every second of the wreckage. That is the trap right there. That is the poison in the punch bowl. Because the second you understand that Chrisean Rock and Blueface are being financially rewarded for the chaos, the whole picture stops being confusing. Of course it keeps happening. The algorithm feeds them. The comment sections feed them. The blogs feed them. The podcasts feed them. The internet keeps clapping every single time Chrisean Rock does something worse than the last thing, and Chrisean Rock keeps clapping back with something even more insane than that. It is a loop. It is a machine. And Chrisean Rock is the fuel. Now here is where the story of Chrisean Rock takes the turn most people forgot about, and honestly, this is the exact moment the receipts really start piling up. Because in the middle of the blood-on-the-wall madness, in the middle of that cross-country car heist, Chrisean Rock ended up in the back of a squad car in Oklahoma. That is not internet lore. That is a police report. That is a booking photo. That is a case number in the state's court system. Chrisean Rock was picked up on possession of a controlled substance and, more importantly, on a distribution charge, which is a totally different animal in the eyes of the law. Possession is one story. Distribution is another story entirely. Distribution means the state is saying Chrisean Rock was not just carrying, she was moving weight. She was working. That is a felony ladder that ends in a completely different zip code from the one most people assume. Blueface talked about the arrest publicly. Blueface said he woke up and his car was gone. Blueface said the night before, they were not even hanging out. Chrisean Rock, according to Blueface, snuck into his house while he was asleep, cut herself open on the way in, left him a bloody love note on the wall, and took off in the vehicle. And by the time Blueface finished dragging himself out of bed and figuring out what had happened, Chrisean Rock was already halfway across the country, running the freeway with the interior of the car looking like a crime scene from a Netflix drama. Blueface then had to fork over $5,000 just to pay a transport service to get the car out of impound and back home. $5,000. Because of Chrisean Rock. Because Chrisean Rock decided the best way to prove love was to stab herself in the wrist and take his G-Wagon on a road trip. Blueface, in his own strange way, was almost defending Chrisean Rock at that point. Blueface was going back and forth, half exposing Chrisean Rock, half telling the internet to stop treating Chrisean Rock like some innocent little angel. Blueface said y'all cannot even tell when Chrisean Rock is lying to y'all 100 times over. And that right there is the part people gloss right over. Blueface, the same Blueface who is knee-deep in every single one of these Chrisean Rock scandals, is telling you plainly that the person he knows better than anyone on earth is not who the public thinks she is. That is not a rival talking. That is not a hater on Twitter. That is Blueface, the man who watched Chrisean Rock slice herself open just to leave a bloody signature on his living room wall. If Blueface, of all people, is warning the internet, it might be worth listening to Blueface. Now here is the part that pulls Chrisean Rock into a whole different tier of trouble entirely. The reason the troopers dug so deep into that car was not just the theft. The reason the charges stacked up so fast was because of what was riding inside the vehicle with Chrisean Rock. Reports at the time said Chrisean Rock had a full pound of Xanax on her when the car got pulled over. Not a pill. Not a strip. Not an ounce. A pound. Let that number breathe for a second. A pound of Xanax is not a personal use situation. That is not a bad night stash. That is a weight that flips a possession case into a full-blown trafficking case, and trafficking is exactly what Chrisean Rock got hit with. Reports said Chrisean Rock was charged with failure to have a tax stamp affixed on dangerous substances and possession of a dangerous substance with intent to distribute, the kind of legal language that carries an 8-year prison ceiling if a jury runs it up the flagpole. 8 years. On Chrisean Rock. Over a pound of bars riding shotgun with her from Los Angeles all the way to Oklahoma. And it gets stranger. Chrisean Rock was reportedly not even the one driving. Chrisean Rock was in the passenger seat when the vehicle got pulled over. Troopers said the car got flagged for not paying a toll. The officers approached, the officers smelled the odor, the officers searched the car, and the officers said what they discovered inside was not a small stash. What the officers said they discovered was a pound of ZA. That is the language they used. And Chrisean Rock, according to those reports, immediately claimed ownership. Chrisean Rock reportedly told the troopers the drugs were hers. And look, I already know the exact question forming in your head: why would anyone in Chrisean Rock's position ever admit to something like that on the side of the road with a body cam rolling? But if you have watched Chrisean Rock operate for 5 minutes, that is exactly the way Chrisean Rock talks. Chrisean Rock talks the talk. Chrisean Rock will yell at a cop, yell at a camera, yell at Blueface, yell at her own baby daddy, yell at the entire internet, and never once measure the actual cost of what she just said. That confession alone tells you everything you need to know about the wiring of Chrisean Rock in that specific season of her life. Chrisean Rock was not thinking about 8 years in prison. Chrisean Rock was thinking about the moment. Chrisean Rock is always thinking about the moment. And the moment is exactly what has been running Chrisean Rock's life into a wall for 4 straight years. And the second we talk about Chrisean Rock and Blueface as a pair, we have to be brutally honest about what that pairing actually is. It is not love. It is not passion. It is not even loyalty. It is a business model built on public dysfunction, and Chrisean Rock and Blueface have perfected it to a science. Every screaming match becomes a headline. Every breakup becomes a live stream. Every fight becomes a clip that runs the algorithm for a solid week straight. Blueface leaks Chrisean Rock. Chrisean Rock leaks Blueface. Blueface goes public with a new woman. Chrisean Rock walks out onto a stage and cries about it in front of a paying crowd. Blueface denies the child. Chrisean Rock posts the child. Blueface posts the child. Blueface deletes the post. The wheel never stops turning, because the wheel is what pays Chrisean Rock and Blueface every single month. Chrisean Rock and Blueface figured out something a lot of celebrities never will: misery is the most bankable emotion on the entire internet, and they have both been printing off it since the day they met on that ill-fated audition years ago. Now here is where the Chrisean Rock story stops being funny. This is the part where the laughing has to stop. Because the second the child enters the frame, this stops being celebrity drama and starts becoming something a lot heavier and a lot darker. Chrisean Rock got pregnant right in the middle of all of this. In the middle of the fighting. In the middle of the arrests. In the middle of the leaks. In the middle of the streams, Chrisean Rock was carrying a baby. And what did the world see? The world watched Chrisean Rock drink on camera while pregnant. The world watched Chrisean Rock smoke on camera while pregnant. The world watched Chrisean Rock take shots to the head in a music studio while pregnant. And this is not some anonymous blog claim you have to squint at through a wall of speculation. It is camera caught, time-stamped, and archived on TikTok forever. Chrisean Rock is on tape, belly showing, holding a shot of dark liquor to her own mouth on camera. That is a fact. That is not opinion. That is what the phone captured. That footage will exist longer than any of us will. A whole other layer of this mess is the way Blueface reacted when journalists literally sat him down and asked him about it. Blueface was in a studio. A reporter pointed out that during Chrisean Rock's pregnancy she had been drinking and smoking in Blueface's own recording studio, and Blueface sat there and shrugged the whole thing off. Blueface said Chrisean Rock is an adult. Blueface said Chrisean Rock can make her own decisions. Blueface said Chrisean Rock was celebrating. Not once, not a single time in that interview, did Blueface say, "You know what, that was my kid in there and I should have said something about it." Not once did Blueface accept an ounce of responsibility. Blueface pushed the entire thing right back onto Chrisean Rock and let the conversation die. And if you want a snapshot of the Chrisean Rock and Blueface parenting philosophy in one clean frame, that is it. Blueface deflected. Chrisean Rock celebrated. Nobody protected the baby. And I have to tread carefully here, because I am not a doctor and I am not going to sit here and diagnose anybody's child. But you are flat out lying to yourself if you pretend the internet has not been talking about Chrisean Rock's son from day one. Every conversation about Chrisean Rock ends up at the same doorstep. Every argument, every stream, every clip, every reaction video. The baby is the first thing that comes up, because the baby has become a living symbol of everything Chrisean Rock and Blueface refuse to fix. When Chrisean Rock is on a red carpet, people ask about the baby. When Blueface is on a podcast, people ask about the baby. When another rapper wants to hurt Blueface, they use the baby as ammunition in the fight. That is not normal. That is not celebrity gossip. That is a child growing up as a rhetorical weapon in his own parents' online war. And nobody, not Chrisean Rock, not Blueface, not the internet, is putting the weapon down. And to prove exactly how ugly it has gotten with Chrisean Rock's son, let me point straight at what another artist said on live stream when he wanted to hurt Blueface. He looked straight into the camera and told Blueface to stand his son next to his own son and see which one could hold his head up, which one could hold his fingers up, which one could slapbox. He weaponized a toddler. He weaponized a 2-year-old to inflict damage on Blueface. And once that clip went viral, Chrisean Rock had to run to the internet and issue an entire statement swearing her son does not have a disability, swearing her son is developing at his own pace, swearing her son is hitting his own milestones on his own timeline. Chrisean Rock said watch him evolve. Chrisean Rock said every child is different. Chrisean Rock said she was confident in his growth. Chrisean Rock said as far as his father's co-parenting decisions, that is personal. Chrisean Rock said she chose peace and safety over dysfunction. Chrisean Rock said she does not do drama anymore. That other artist actually walked it back on stream and thanked Chrisean Rock for the correction. But the damage was already carved into the internet's memory. Because now every viewer clicking on any Chrisean Rock video is quietly asking themselves the exact same question, is that baby okay? And Chrisean Rock cannot answer that question, no matter how many statements Chrisean Rock issues, because nobody is willing to trust the mother in this situation. That is what happens when Chrisean Rock spends 4 years building a public persona out of chaos. And this is where Chrisean Rock's story starts leaking into something even darker, because you literally cannot talk about the baby without talking about who fathered the baby. And this is where the third man walks onto the stage. Chrisean Rock. Blueface. And Ronnie. For years, the internet just assumed the child belonged to Blueface. For years, Blueface acted the part, sometimes claiming him, sometimes denying him, sometimes posting him, sometimes deleting him. But behind the curtain the whole time, Ronnie was there. Ronnie stepped forward with receipts. Ronnie said he had been in the picture. Ronnie said Chrisean Rock had been running back and forth between Los Angeles and Baltimore during the exact timeline that matters. Ronnie went on livestream after livestream begging for the same simple thing, a DNA test. That is all Ronnie was asking for. Ronnie was not asking for money. Ronnie was not asking for a payday. Ronnie was not asking for a reality show. Ronnie was asking to know if the child on Chrisean Rock's hip was his son. Ronnie said any real man who thought he might have a son would want to know. Ronnie said his last name was Kane, and if the baby was his, then another Kane existed in the world, and Ronnie refused to let that possibility get buried under Chrisean Rock and Blueface's public soap opera. Ronnie said he was the last Kane. Ronnie said his family name might end with him if nobody hit him back with the truth. Ronnie said all he needed was a swab of the mouth, a strand of hair, a drop of blood. Ronnie was not aggressive. Ronnie was not threatening. Ronnie was begging. Ronnie was begging the internet, begging Chrisean Rock, begging Blueface, begging anybody with morals and principles to hold Chrisean Rock accountable and hold Blueface accountable and just let him have a seat at the paternity table. And then Ronnie was dead. Ronnie did not just pass away. Ronnie was murdered. Ronnie was killed in the middle of publicly demanding a paternity test on Chrisean Rock's son. And once that news dropped, every single finger on the internet swung around and pointed straight at Chrisean Rock. People started saying Chrisean Rock had set him up. People started digging up old clips of Ronnie saying, on stream, that if anything ever happened to him, everybody would know exactly what went down and exactly who was behind it. People started noticing the timing. People started noticing the coincidence. People started noticing how convenient the silence was. Chrisean Rock came out and swore she had nothing to do with Ronnie's death. Chrisean Rock said she was sitting in a gym when investigators showed up. Chrisean Rock said she told them to come inside. Chrisean Rock said they had his phone. Chrisean Rock said they were recording her answers. Chrisean Rock said she welcomed the whole investigation because she wanted the real killer found. Chrisean Rock said trolls kept writing her name for controversy. Chrisean Rock said she was tired of the entire internet trying to put a body on her. Chrisean Rock said she stopped loving Ronnie before he ever left this earth. Chrisean Rock said Ronnie had been trying to diminish her character. Chrisean Rock said Ronnie had been trying to clout chase off her son. Chrisean Rock said by the time Ronnie was gone, she had no feelings in her body at all. Say that out loud one more time. Chrisean Rock said, on the record, that when the man who had been publicly demanding a paternity test on her son turned up murdered, she felt nothing in her body. Not grief. Not shock. Not sadness. Not confusion. Nothing. And then, in almost the very same breath, Chrisean Rock pivoted the entire conversation away from Ronnie's death and started talking about substances and basement operations and everything except the actual question people were asking her about. Chrisean Rock said people were trafficking through his basement. Chrisean Rock said nobody was holding Ronnie accountable. Chrisean Rock said nobody was trying to save Ronnie before he died. Chrisean Rock deflected. Chrisean Rock spun. Chrisean Rock did what Chrisean Rock always does when the camera gets a little too close and the questions get a little too heavy. Chrisean Rock moved the target. And the internet noticed. The internet always notices. Blueface, meanwhile, finally stepped forward and made his own statement about the paternity question. Blueface said Chrisean Jr. is not his biological son. Blueface said rest in peace to the father, Ronnie. Blueface said he could no longer plot, he could no longer pretend, he could no longer let people paint him as an absent father to a child that was never biologically his to begin with. Blueface said he had tried his best to fill in the blanks because the biological father was no longer alive to fill them in himself, but Blueface said he could not continue to carry the lie any further. Blueface said it did not feel right as a present father to all his other kids to be discredited as an absent father to a child that was not biologically his. And Chrisean Rock fired back immediately. Chrisean Rock said as a mother, her only responsibility was to protect her child. Chrisean Rock said less than a week earlier, Blueface had disrespected her son in public. Chrisean Rock said Blueface had called both of them dumb on a live stream. Chrisean Rock said Blueface had insulted her son's hair. Chrisean Rock said she would never normalize any of that behavior from Blueface. Chrisean Rock said no one was denying anyone access out of spite. Chrisean Rock said her responsibility as a mother was protection. And then, just months later, Blueface flipped the whole script again. Blueface hopped on Instagram and posted a photo of Chrisean Rock holding her son with a 2-word caption. "My son." 2 words. Blueface then deleted the post within minutes, but the internet already had the screenshot. The internet always has the screenshot. And Blueface then said he never posted the caption in the first place. Blueface said the post appeared on his account without his knowledge. Blueface said y'all know damn well I ain't posting none of that. Blueface said it was somebody else. Blueface said his account got compromised. Blueface said everything except accountability. But Chrisean Rock, and you could see it plain as day in the way Chrisean Rock reacted, was hurt by the whole ordeal. Chrisean Rock quietly took her own version of the post down. The wound reopened right in front of the whole timeline. Blueface reopened it. Chrisean Rock bled quietly. This is Chrisean Rock's life. This is Blueface's life. This is the exact world their so-called son wakes up in every single morning. Every X is a lawsuit. Every argument is a live stream. Every mistake is a headline. Every headline is a payday. And underneath the flashing lights of the payday sits a toddler that nobody in this story is actually protecting. Not Chrisean Rock. Not Blueface. Not the podcast hosts who giggle their way through the interviews. Not the streamers who use the baby as a punchline for cheap engagement. Not the algorithm, which keeps rewarding every last one of them for turning a child into content. Not the fans, who keep clicking, keep commenting, keep sharing, keep watching. Still running the same playbook. That is exactly what Chrisean Rock is doing in 2026. It is not just the past. It is not just old clips. It is not just archive footage. It is right now. Just recently, Chrisean Rock was throwing hands in the middle of the street with a friend of Blueface's other baby mother. Right in traffic. In broad daylight. In front of cameras. Chrisean Rock got separated from her security team. Chrisean Rock got surrounded. Chrisean Rock said 4 girls walked up on her at the same time. Chrisean Rock said she put her hands up and told them her hands were registered. Chrisean Rock said the other woman swung first. Chrisean Rock said she slipped the first punch, smiled, reached back, and connected. Chrisean Rock said you could hear the connect on the tape even if you could not see it because whoever was recording was too busy watching the fight instead of holding the phone steady. Chrisean Rock said she was not proud of it. Chrisean Rock said she was not going to be bullied. Chrisean Rock called the whole thing a friendly fade. A friendly fade. That is how Chrisean Rock describes throwing a full-contact haymaker in the middle of a public street in 2026 with cameras rolling from every angle. Chrisean Rock is not slowing down. Chrisean Rock is not softening. Chrisean Rock is not learning from a single one of these situations. Chrisean Rock is escalating. Because the internet keeps escalating with Chrisean Rock. That is what the algorithm does. You put dysfunction in front of it, the algorithm feeds. And Chrisean Rock has been feeding the algorithm since 2022. Every single time it looks like Chrisean Rock might finally take a breath, might finally step away from the spotlight, might finally use some of that money to buy a house in a quiet neighborhood and disappear for 6 months, Chrisean Rock does the exact opposite. Chrisean Rock posts. Chrisean Rock fights. Chrisean Rock live streams. Chrisean Rock climbs back onto the exact same stage that has been eating her alive for years, and Chrisean Rock lights the stage on fire all over again. And do not forget, I already know somebody is going to bring this up in the comments. Chrisean Rock tried, for a very short window of time, to convert this whole story into a redemption arc. Chrisean Rock started dropping gospel music. Chrisean Rock started saying she gave her life to God. Chrisean Rock started saying she was walking in a new season. Chrisean Rock started using scripture on Instagram captions. Chrisean Rock started saying she was healing. And listen closely, I am never going to knock anybody who genuinely finds faith. Real change is real change. But you cannot spray paint the word forgiveness across the front of a house that is still on fire in the back. Chrisean Rock cannot pretend the pound of Xanax did not exist. Chrisean Rock cannot pretend the bloody wall did not exist. Chrisean Rock cannot pretend the pregnancy footage did not exist. Chrisean Rock cannot pretend Ronnie did not exist. Chrisean Rock cannot pretend the Streamer Awards hot car situation did not exist. Chrisean Rock cannot pretend the fight in the street did not exist. That is not redemption. That is rebranding. And the internet can tell the difference between the two every single time. The internet always can. And even if you strip away the arrests entirely, strip away the fights, strip away the paternity war, strip away Blueface completely, what you are still left with is a woman whose baby was once left in a car during a Texas heatwave outside of a Streamer Awards event, so hot that staff members from the venue had to physically walk out into the parking lot and retrieve the child themselves. Chrisean Rock left her son in a car in dangerous heat for a Streamer Awards. Read that again slowly, because it deserves the pause. Chrisean Rock left her son for the internet. Chrisean Rock left her son for the clicks. Chrisean Rock left her son for the room. Chrisean Rock left her son for the algorithm. That is not internet gossip. That is on the record. Employees of the event had to save Chrisean Rock's son from Chrisean Rock's own decision-making. And that alone would end most public careers overnight in almost any other context. But because Chrisean Rock and Blueface are already so deep in the toxic content ecosystem, nothing ends. It just cycles. It just resets. It just rebrands. And the audience just keeps watching. Blueface, for his part, has never once truly closed the door on Chrisean Rock either, no matter how many statements he has issued over the years. Blueface keeps flip-flopping. Blueface will drag Chrisean Rock one week and post Chrisean Rock the next week. Blueface will deny the baby 1 month and caption a photo my son the very next month. Blueface will call Chrisean Rock a liar in one clip and defend Chrisean Rock in another clip on the same day. Blueface is not a bystander in any of this. Blueface is a co-architect of every single situation Chrisean Rock is currently drowning in. Blueface built the stage Chrisean Rock keeps burning down, and every single time Chrisean Rock burns it, Blueface hands her a fresh match on live camera and asks her to strike it again for the timeline. And in the middle of every fire Chrisean Rock and Blueface set, there is a 2-year-old boy trying his best to grow up. A boy whose paternity was debated on Instagram Live. A boy whose potential disability was mocked by a rival rapper on stream in front of thousands of people. A boy whose mother was accused by the entire internet of possibly setting up his real father to be killed. A boy whose so-called father keeps switching sides on whether he is even a father at all. A boy who has been left in a hot car in a Texas heatwave. A boy whose parents celebrated a pregnancy with shots of dark liquor in the corner of a music studio. A boy who cannot walk into a barbershop one day without hearing his own family's greatest hits played back to him on the television in the corner. That is the real horror of the Chrisean Rock saga. Not the fights. Not the arrests. Not the blood on the walls. Not the pound of Xanax. Not even Ronnie. The horror is that everything Chrisean Rock and Blueface have done together is now permanently archived on the internet, sitting quietly in servers around the world, ready and waiting for a child to find it the exact second he learns how to type his own name into a search bar. And when Chrisean Rock's son does, because he will, and every child in his position eventually does, what is he going to see? He is going to see his mother crying on stage. He is going to see his father denying him publicly. He is going to see a man named Ronnie who spent his last months on this earth begging to know if he was actually the father. He is going to see a fight in the middle of the street. He is going to see the walls his mother allegedly wrote on in her own blood. He is going to see Chrisean Rock in a mugshot. He is going to see Blueface in a courtroom. He is going to see himself in the middle of every single headline. And nobody in this story is going to be able to hand him a good explanation for any of it. You following me? This is not gossip anymore. This is not entertainment. This is a slow-motion warning about what happens when two adults treat their entire lives as content and forget that a real human being is growing up inside the frame of every single upload. Chrisean Rock is not just a scandal. Blueface is not just a scandal. Together, Chrisean Rock and Blueface are a case study in what the internet is currently willing to reward with attention, money, and endless second chances. And the darker the story of Chrisean Rock and Blueface gets, the more aggressively the algorithm coughs it up to the top of your feed. That is the ugly math of this era. The worse Chrisean Rock behaves, the more Chrisean Rock earns. The worse Blueface behaves, the more Blueface earns. And the worse it gets for their child, the more everybody else earns off of watching it happen. So the real question here is not whether Chrisean Rock has lost her mind. Chrisean Rock lost her mind years ago, in front of all of us, in high definition, on every camera pointed her way. The real question, the one that keeps me up at night when I think about the Chrisean Rock story too long, is what happens the day Chrisean Rock's son becomes old enough to lose his own mind because of everything Chrisean Rock and Blueface refused to protect him from when he was too small to protect himself. That is the loop nobody in this saga is willing to close. That is the storyline the internet is eventually going to have to sit with in silence. And that is exactly why the Chrisean Rock and Blueface chapter is nowhere close to being over. Because let me tell you something. Every time the internet thinks Chrisean Rock has hit the bottom, Chrisean Rock finds a new floor to fall through. Every time the internet thinks Blueface has finally quit the game, Blueface pops right back up on somebody's live stream saying something even wilder. Every time somebody says Chrisean Rock has changed, Chrisean Rock proves them wrong by the end of the week. Every time somebody says Blueface has grown up, Blueface reminds them why the answer is no. Chrisean Rock and Blueface are a cycle. Chrisean Rock and Blueface are a loop. Chrisean Rock and Blueface are an addiction, for each other, for the fans, for the algorithm, for the blogs, for every commentator who has built a career off narrating the wreckage in real time. And the addiction is not breaking. The addiction is deepening. The addiction is escalating. And Chrisean Rock is right there in the middle, always feeding the flame. And here is the part that keeps eating at me the most whenever I sit with the Chrisean Rock story late at night. Chrisean Rock is a talented young woman. Chrisean Rock can genuinely sing. Chrisean Rock can genuinely rap. Chrisean Rock can command a room the second she walks into it. Chrisean Rock has a stage presence most artists would trade half their catalog to own. That is the tragedy inside the tragedy. Because underneath every single one of these Chrisean Rock scandals is a real career that Chrisean Rock is actively torching in slow motion. Blueface was in the same position years ago. Blueface had a viral hit. Blueface had a stadium tour on the horizon. Blueface had a label pushing him. And Blueface torched all of it for the exact same reason Chrisean Rock is torching hers right now, because the chaos paid faster than the craft ever could. That is the ugliest part of this entire era. Chrisean Rock and Blueface both had a real shot at long-term careers. Chrisean Rock and Blueface both traded that shot for viral moments. And Chrisean Rock and Blueface both convinced themselves the trade was worth it, because the internet kept clapping every time the trade got worse. And one more thing before we close this out, because it matters. Every single reaction video, every single blog headline, every single podcast segment about Chrisean Rock is fuel too. I am aware of that. This video is fuel. Somebody is going to clip this. Somebody is going to argue about this. Somebody is going to send it to Chrisean Rock. Somebody is going to send it to Blueface. That is how the machine works. But the difference between narrating a story and living it is that narrators can walk away when the credits roll. Chrisean Rock cannot walk away from being Chrisean Rock. Blueface cannot walk away from being Blueface. And their son cannot walk away from being their son. That asymmetry is exactly why the Chrisean Rock and Blueface story is so heavy, so uncomfortable, and so impossible to ignore. Stay locked in with me. Because whatever Chrisean Rock and Blueface do next, and something is always next, that is the one guarantee this whole story offers, you already know it is going to spill everywhere before the sun sets. Drop your take in the comments below. Tell me who you honestly think is the most responsible party in this whole disaster. Chrisean Rock. Blueface. Ronnie, rest his soul. The internet as a whole. The algorithm. The podcast hosts. The streamers. The blogs. The fans. All of them. Somebody has to actually be held accountable one day. And if the last 4 years of the Chrisean Rock and Blueface saga are any indication at all, Chrisean Rock and Blueface are not going to stop on their own until the world finally makes them. And by then, it might already be too late for the smallest person in the story, the child who never asked for any of it and cannot leave the room.